27 children, all dead, not from disease, not from war, but murdered by their own father. In a single night, a king ordered the execution of every single one of his sons, from infants still nursing to grown men with families of their own. Palace guards dragged screaming children from their beds. Mothers watched helplessly as swords pierced through their babies. Blood soaked into Persian carpets worth more than entire villages. And the man who ordered it all, he sat on his throne, calmly sipping wine, counting each death like coins in his treasury. This is Sultan Murad IV of the Ottoman Empire, and by age 28, he'd become one of history's most paranoid rulers. At his peak, he controlled territory spanning 3 continents. His empire generated wealth that would be worth $7 trillion today. He commanded armies of 200,000 men, and boy did he enjoy that power. But here's the crucial part. Murad didn't just kill his children. He systematically eliminated every single family member who could challenge him. Brothers, nephews, cousins, uncles. If they shared his blood, they were marked for death. The Ottoman palace became a slaughterhouse, where being born royal was a death sentence. But how does a child who played with his siblings in palace gardens end up drowning them in the Bosphorus? How does a boy raised by a loving mother grow up to strangle pregnant women with his bare hands? The truth behind this story is even crazier than you'd imagine, because Murad wasn't born evil. He was created by a system so twisted, so brilliantly cruel, that it turned family love into pure survival instinct. You see, in the Ottoman Empire, there was a law, a single law that explains everything. It was called fratricide, and it stated that when a sultan took the throne, he had the legal right, no, the obligation, to murder all his brothers. Every single one. This wasn't hidden. It wasn't shameful. It was official state policy, written into law, blessed by religious leaders. Think about that for a second. Imagine growing up, knowing that either you'll murder your brothers or they'll murder you. There's no third option. From the moment Ottoman princes could understand words, they understood this. Love is weakness. Trust is death. And the only way to survive is to kill everyone you've ever cared about. Welcome to the insane true story of Sultan Murad IV. Murad was born in 1,612 inches the Topkapi Palace in Constantinople, and from day one his life was a contradiction. Golden cradles and death threats, silk clothes and poison testers. Every meal could be his last. Every playmate could be his executioner. His father, Sultan Ahmed I, had broken tradition. Instead of killing his brother Mustafa, he'd locked him in a palace prison called the Kafes, the Golden Cage. This act of mercy would later destroy everything. When Murad was just 5, his father died, and that's when the real nightmare began. You see, the Ottoman succession system was pure chaos. There was no clear heir, no line of succession. Whoever could grab power and hold it became sultan. At age 5, Murad watched his uncle Mustafa get dragged from prison to throne, completely insane from decades of isolation. Then he watched his older brother Osman take the throne at 14. Then he watched that same brother get strangled by his own guards when a coup erupted. Murad would later reflect on this and say it was like watching a preview of his own death. 7 years old, and he's already seen 2 sultans murdered. His mother, Kezim Sultan, pulled him close one night and whispered something that would define his entire life. Trust no one. Not your brothers, not your viziers, not even me. In this palace, love is the deadliest poison. It was an early lesson for Murad that paranoia wasn't madness, it was wisdom. By age 8, he'd already survived 3 assassination attempts, poison in his sherbet, a snake in his bed, an archer who missed during hunting practice. Each time, his mother's spies saved him, but Murad learned something crucial. Death was always one breath away. The truth is, Ottoman princes weren't raised to be rulers, they were raised to be survivors. While European princes learned languages and philosophy, Murad learned to recognize the taste of poison. He learned that servants who smiled too much were probably holding daggers. He learned that the safest place to sleep was with your back against a wall and a knife under your pillow. But here's what's really interesting. Murad was actually gentle as a child. Palace records describe him as quiet, thoughtful, even kind to servants. He loved poetry, spent hours in the library, and his favorite companion was a pet rabbit he'd named Snowball. One day, he found Snowball skinned and roasted on his dinner plate, a gift from his younger brother Bayezid, who wanted to show he could be cruel too. Murad didn't cry, he didn't rage. He simply ate the rabbit, every single bite, while staring at his brother. The message was clear: I can swallow anything, even this. When Murad was 11, his mother orchestrated something brilliant. Using her vast network of spies and allies, she staged a palace coup that removed the insane Mustafa and placed Murad on the throne. But Murad saw an opportunity here that nobody expected. Instead of being his mother's puppet, he started learning. For the first 5 years of his reign, he let his mother rule while he watched everything. Every meeting, every decision, every betrayal. Using these new connections and observations, he built his own shadow network. Servants who owed him favors, guards who respected his memory for names and faces, foreign ambassadors impressed by the child who spoke 7 languages. The truth is, while everyone saw a boy sultan controlled by his mother, Murad was playing a much longer game. In many ways, it was such an incredibly simple move, but it was the meticulous planning that made it possible. He identified every power player in the empire, their wants, their fears, their secrets. His younger brothers thought he was weak, spending all his time reading poetry and practicing calligraphy. They didn't realize he was reading military histories, studying the failures of previous sultans, memorizing every assassination in Ottoman history. Then, when Murad turned 17, everything changed. A Janissary rebellion erupted in the capital. These elite soldiers, who'd been kingmakers for generations, demanded higher pay and threatened to tear the empire apart. His mother wanted to negotiate, his advisors wanted to flee, but Murad saw his chance. In a single night, he did something nobody expected. He walked out of the palace, alone, straight into the Janissary barracks. No guards, no weapons, just a 17-year-old boy facing 10,000 of the world's most dangerous soldiers. He stood before them and made a speech that would become legend. You want gold? Take it. You want power? I'll give it. But know this, from this moment, you belong to me. Not my mother, not my viziers, me. And if you serve me, you'll have more gold than you can carry. If you betray me, I'll feed your children to dogs. The Janissaries laughed. Then Murad pulled out a list. Every Janissary commander who'd been skimming funds, every soldier who'd sold military secrets, every betrayal from the last 5 years. His mother didn't know he had this information. Nobody did. The Janissaries knelt, all 10,000 of them. In that moment, the boy sultan became a man, and everyone in the empire felt the change. But here's the crucial part that history books often miss. Murad's transformation into a killer didn't happen overnight. It started with a single execution, his brother-in-law, who'd been plotting with foreign powers. Murad didn't just kill him, he made him dig his own grave, then buried him alive while the entire court watched. The message was clear: betrayal equals suffering. What people didn't realize was that this execution was just the opening move in Murad's master plan to consolidate power absolutely. You see, Murad realized something his predecessors hadn't. Fear wasn't enough. You needed to be unpredictable. Sometimes he'd forgive treason with a smile. Sometimes he'd execute someone for looking at him wrong. Nobody could figure out the pattern, because there wasn't one. This randomness was the pattern. By age 20, Murad now had complete control, and this is very different to previous sultans who relied on advisors. He personally read every report, attended every execution, made every decision. He slept 3 hours a night, spending the rest prowling palace corridors, surprising guards, testing their loyalty. Then came the moment that would define his reign. His brother Bayezid, the same one who'd killed his rabbit, was caught meeting with Austrian ambassadors. The standard punishment was execution, but Murad did something far worse. He made Bayezid his personal cupbearer, forcing him to taste every meal for poison. For 3 years, Bayezid lived, knowing any meal could be his last, watching his brother eat, waiting for the inevitable. The psychological torture was so intense that Bayezid eventually begged for death. Murad granted it, but not before Bayezid had to watch his own sons strangled first. This is where Murad's paranoia reached new heights. He created a new law. Any concubine who gave birth to a son would be executed after the child's first birthday. The logic was insane but consistent. No mother would seek revenge for a dead son if she was dead too. The palace birth records from this period are horrifying. Between 1,632 and 1,635, 19 princes were born. None survived past age 3, but the killings didn't stop there. Murad expanded the traditional fratricide law. Now, it wasn't just brothers who died. It was any male relative who could theoretically claim the throne. Cousins, nephews, even his own sons. One night, in 1637, Murad hosted a feast for his extended family. 43 relatives attended. By morning, only 6 were still alive, all female, all past childbearing age. The bodies were dumped in the Bosphorus, and fishermen reported that sharks followed the Ottoman palace's waste channels for weeks afterward, waiting for more corpses. The problem was Murad had become addicted to killing. What started as political calculation became psychological need. He'd execute servants for serving cold soup. He'd strangle musicians who played wrong notes. Once, he saw a man smoking tobacco, which he'd banned, and personally shot him with an arrow from his palace window. But the fratricide didn't stop there. As Murad eliminated more family members, he started running out of heirs. The Ottoman dynasty, which had ruled for 300 years, was literally dying out. His own advisors started asking uncomfortable questions. "Your Majesty, who will succeed you if all the princes are dead?" Murad's answer chilled them. "The empire dies with me." Little did Murad know, but this systematic elimination of his family was creating a crisis that would outlive him. The gene pool of the Ottoman dynasty was shrinking so rapidly that future sultans would be increasingly weak, insane, or infertile. However, back in the empire, people were starting to ask questions about their sultan's sanity. Reports of Murad prowling Istanbul at night, personally executing anyone he caught drinking alcohol or smoking, spread through the empire. He once encountered a group of women laughing near the palace walls and had them all drowned because their joy mocked his suffering. Foreign ambassadors wrote home describing a ruler who'd gone from feared to psychotic. The Venetian ambassador wrote, "The Sultan trusts no one, not even his own shadow. He sleeps in a different room each night, eats only what his brother has tasted, and keeps a loaded crossbow beside his throne." The irony was that in trying to eliminate all threats, Murad was creating new ones. Every execution created grieving relatives. Every dead prince had loyal servants who remembered better times. The palace became a pressure cooker of suppressed rage, and everyone was waiting for Murad to show weakness. Then, in February 1640, something happened that changed everything. Murad, who'd seemed invincible, collapsed during a military campaign. Doctors found his liver was failing, destroyed by the same wine he'd used to calm his paranoid nightmares. For Murad, as news of his illness started to come out, the vultures began circling. The same courtiers who'd praised his every execution now whispered about succession. The janissaries who'd knelt to him started making other plans. His mother, now elderly but still sharp, began positioning the last surviving prince, Murad's brother Ibrahim, who'd been locked in the cafes for 20 years and was completely insane. The final months of Murad's life were pathetic. The man who'd terrorized an empire was now too weak to lift his own sword. He'd scream orders for executions, but servants would just nod and ignore him. He tried to order Ibrahim's death from his deathbed, but his mother countermanded it. The dynasty must survive, she said, even if the Sultan doesn't. On the 8th of February 1640, Murad died at age 27. He'd ruled for 17 years and killed more of his own family than any sultan before or after. His last words, according to palace records, were, "I should have killed them all." As for Ibrahim, he emerged from his prison cage after 2 decades of isolation, so insane that he believed Murad was still alive and the throne was a trap. He had to be physically forced onto the throne, screaming that his brother would kill him. The Ottoman Empire would never fully recover from Murad's reign. The systematic elimination of competent princes meant future sultans were either mad, weak, or both. Within 200 years, the empire that had once threatened all of Europe would collapse entirely. Ultimately, though, the people who suffered most were the Ottoman princes who came after. What is clear is this system of royal fratricide was an example of how absolute power can be manipulated to justify absolute horror. Every sultan after Murad lived with his ghost. They inherited an empire where murdering family was normal, where paranoia was wisdom, where the palace walls were literally stained with royal blood. Reports suggest that towards the end, Murad had gone from a thoughtful child to something barely human. He couldn't sleep without checking under his bed 12 times. He couldn't eat without watching 3 people taste his food. He couldn't even embrace his own mother without checking her for hidden blades. The fratricide law would officially continue for another century, but Murad had taken it to such extremes that even the Ottomans realized it was destroying them. Future sultans found ways around it: exile instead of execution, sterilization instead of strangulation. But the damage was done. The Ottoman dynasty, once proud of its warrior princes, became known for producing madmen and weaklings. Modern psychologists, studying Murad's life, see classic symptoms of paranoid personality disorder combined with antisocial behavior caused by severe childhood trauma. The system designed to create strong rulers instead created monsters. What's particularly tragic is that Murad was reportedly brilliant in other areas. He spoke 7 languages, wrote beautiful poetry, and his military campaigns were tactically genius. But all that potential was poisoned by a system that taught him love was death. Today, the Topkapi Palace is a museum. Tourists walk through the same halls where princes were strangled, admire the same gardens where children played before killing each other. Few realize they're standing in what was essentially a royal slaughterhouse, where being born into privilege meant being marked for death. The Ottoman Empire's fratricide law stands as history's most extreme example of how power corrupts not just individuals, but entire systems. It shows what happens when political stability is valued more than human life, when paranoia becomes policy, when family bonds are seen as weakness rather than strength. Now, whilst the story of Sultan Murad IV is pretty horrifying, I still wouldn't call him the most psychologically twisted ruler in history. For that, you're going to want to check out the absolutely insane story of Emperor Caligula, who didn't just kill his family. He married his own sister, made his horse a senator, and built a floating bridge across the Bay of Naples just so he could ride across it in a chariot dressed as the sun god. His reign makes Murad look sane by comparison, and the way he died, let's just say it involves over 30 stab wounds and his own guards. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.